Good day, ladies and gents, dear listeners. How is everyone going? This is Saba from the City McWiggles project. Thanks for tuning in to the new week on the City Talks Music podcast, the special Girl Power March 2024 edition. I hope you've enjoyed the chat with my two previous guests, the amazing female musos Pilani Bubu and Fanny Lumsden. This week, I'm interviewing an emerging indie artist from Australia, Bella Deer, whose song, Care Too Much, I had on repeat for a few days at the end of last year. This is how good it is. Funnily, it was Bella who found me on LinkedIn, of all social media channels, can you imagine? So I guess I should pay more attention to that professional platform after all. Anyway, after looking into her music portfolio, so to speak, I had the impression Bella would have an interesting story to tell about taking the first steps in the music business. And I wasn't wrong. In fact, if I could give our chat a cheeky nickname, it would probably be the title from Taylor Swift's upcoming album, The Tortured Poets Department. And I don't mean it in a bad way. But throughout our conversation, Bella has pointed out quite a few aspects of that winding music industry road when you're just trying to suss things out. Her experiences have been mostly positive though. She's been able to avail of some cool opportunities that we'll talk about in our chat. She attributes it partially to the fact that she grew up in a regional area of Australia, namely Geelong, a port city about 65 kilometers or 40 miles southwest of Melbourne. And this is actually what I wanted to start this part of the City Talk with. Bella is going to talk us through her early musical and not only experiences in Geelong and explain why every musician wants to be in Melbourne at some point in their lives.
I was talking about this with someone recently. I'm just really grateful that I've grown up where I've grown up in this regional area, because I didn't grow up in Melbourne and I've always wanted to be in Melbourne so badly. But, for a lot of kids, it's not always financially possible that you can get a spot at a college in Melbourne, or your parents may not be able to afford you living in Melbourne. So I had to wait till I was an adult to do that. So I actually lived up there. Sounds like you and I crossed paths. I was up in Thornbury in 2019, living up there, and went music community. So I was like, I'm a Melbourneite now. That's what I am. And then, of course, my family's in Geelong. So I came back to Geelong. Little known to me that the whole world would shut down. But I love the Melbourne community, and I felt so much more at home in a community in Melbourne than I have in the past in Geelong. But I think it's just the closeness of all the suburbs, and you're all interacting and you're all going to the same gigs and you're supporting each other's gigs. And what you were saying earlier, it's just everyone's interconnected in Melbourne. That's what I love about Melbourne, whereas Geelong is a lot more spaced out. There's less venues, there's less things happening in the weekdays. It's just a different lifestyle down here. It's beachy and a bit, it's laid back, but in a spread out way. Still good in festivals and other events, but Melbourne is, I guess what people say, is the music capital of Australia, for good reason. Even the trams, you can put your keyboard, your guitar on the tram, and you can go to the gig, like, so easy. So you can't really do that in Geelong.
Yeah. And how cool is that they have, like, I don't know if it still exists, but back when I was there, like the trams, like within the CBD area, were for free. So like if you kind of like,
Exactly.
I'm like, what? That is so cool. Not that anybody kind of visits that area very often, because all the good venues and stuff are outside. But obviously, if you kind of work in the city, it's very convenient.
Very.
Yeah, but speaking of Geelong, and I've been there a couple of times. It's just also because it's kind of like a gateway to the Great Ocean Road, and like if you go in that direction, you have to pass via Geelong. And I remember you've got Little Creatures there, right? The brewery as well, which is one of my favorite. Yeah. And I've been to that one and the one in Freo in Western Australia as well.
Yeah.
But I was just going to ask whether, because you started talking about this, whether there is actually something like a separate music scene in Geelong, or like, do you know a lot of musicians, or like, do you have like proper venues like they do in Melbourne? Because, my impression was, and maybe it's just my understanding of it, that, whenever you spoke about Geelong when you were in Melbourne, people would like smile politely because, like, yeah, Geelong, you know what I mean? So because it's a smaller place, obviously, and maybe,
Yeah.
so just wanted to know whether when you were growing up, you were kind of surrounded by that kind of scene, or like if you knew musicians from there too.
I did meet a music teacher that worked with my class when I was growing up. So like from the age of 15 to the end of school, we had a guitar teacher, and he sort of was talking to me, oh, it was a while ago now, and he sort of said that year of your year, there were so many people in bands and all playing together, and you were all very strong. And we never ever had a group like that after you guys. And I was like, oh, really? That's really interesting. So I don't know, like I think there's so many different pockets of really good things happening. Like at one school in Geelong, they've got the Sweethearts, which is a female identifying group that they've traveled internationally, and that group, they play at school and they do big, jazz festivals and stuff. Like I wasn't a part of that group, but it's amazing that that's there, and that's an awesome resource for the people that can be involved in it when they're at school. I suppose there are also other venues that have opened and closed over the years. So there was a really cool place in Geelong called Kubu, which had a lot of gigs happening, but that venue closed down. And I know that happens in Melbourne too, but there's just like little pockets of things where cool things happen for a while and then it might go somewhere else. Mm-hmm. So I think it depends what scene you're in and what sort of music you're playing, and where you fit in that. So personal preference, really. We've only really got one main venue at the moment, which is the Barwon Club. There's things happening. I just wish it was more and more often that we had venues that actually dedicated a music roster of acts and not just touring acts, but something really regular. And I think I always feel optimistic about it, that things are happening, but I guess it changes where you are in your life and what you're up to, and if you've got kids, or if you're starting out or something. So yeah. I think there's something for everyone. It just depends what you do.
Okay, so now we have a bit more background to Bella's journey in the music business. But let's dive deeper into those opportunities she had at the beginning. It actually sounds funny when I talk about her as an emerging muso, because Bella's been in this game for over a decade now, just under a different name and with a different project. During that time, as her press release states, she cut her teeth on stage with Mia Dyson, Husky, Tando, and other musos. And if you're familiar with the Melbourne music scene, those acts I've just mentioned are pretty recognizable. So let's find out how she came across all those experiences.
So I guess I've mostly done support acts for a lot of bands that were touring through Geelong, but a couple of them were other mentoring programs that I was able to, like, I applied for. And Mia Dyson, again, she came to Geelong back in 2012, I think, and we played a few songs together on stage, and she played a couple of my songs. It's just good to get experience with touring musicians, and I've always appreciated having a support act, but I wasn't really doing any touring myself. It was always just local shows. That's kind of changed in the last couple of years, but I always just had these opportunities that came up, and I always just said yes, because you never know where something's going to go. And I think that's just where you get your best performance experiences. You just say yes to everything and do as much as possible in as many different situations as possible, with as many different technical things that go wrong, or different crowds, or they might not like your set, or you might not like the audience. Like, there's just so many things that are different.
Was it already as Bella Dia, or did you kind of was it like a different project, or were you kind of like undefined as a muso back then yet, or like you were just kind of trying to suss it out what it's like in the music world?
Oh, look, I used to perform under my own name, and I released 2 EPs under my own name with a band. And I had, I did a crowdfunding a couple of years ago, and I pressed vinyl. And because I've changed my name now, I can't really sell the vinyl. I think with every EP that I've released, there's been lots of opportunities to showcase those pieces of work. And I think that even if you do change your performance, your project theme or sound, that you should still be proud of your back what you've done in the past has made you who you are now. So I think it's important to acknowledge what you have done in the past and keep growing from that. And all the things I've done have just given just experience. It's just like having a feather in your cap. It's probably more of a folky sound, like singer-songwriter folk sort of esque, with oboes and cello and violin and trumpets and that sort of sound with the piano. I've sort of gone more modern pop, contemporary pop, indie pop.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you like how you would classify yourself, although I know that musos don't like it because it's really hard sometimes. And besides, you want to be like, you don't want to be put in like, like pigeonholed in a way. So, but people like well, like what they can expect. But what I wanted to ask as well is, so I guess it normally happens that, when you go from one thing to another, there's like an event that kind of sparks that kind of will to do something else, or like you I don't know, like in my case, for instance, sometimes it's like, excuse my language, it's like, fuck it, let's do it, because I might be thinking about it a lot and then like want to be prepared, like want to have like the plan and like the whole strategy, and then like it's like if I don't start doing it, then I will never do it. So I'm just wondering what it was in your case.
That's a great question. And the way that it kind of happened, it was pretty natural, with a couple of opportunities that I had been given under my old project. I used to be announced, like my name would be pronounced wrong at a festival, or I'd get a radio spot and they'd ask me on the phone before we go on air, how do you say your name? And then I'd go on air and they'd say it wrong. And I'm like, well, I can't correct them on live to air, can I? So it just got spelt wrong and it got pronounced wrong. And I had sent a bunch of demos to a producer that I had admired a lot of artists that he had produced. And that was when I was living in Melbourne. And I just thought, you know what? I'm just going to send him my demos and see what happens and see if he's available. And he got back to me. He's like, yeah, cool. You want to work together? That sounds good. I was like, what? So that was kind of the catalyst. Like, I did all the research. I listened to all the tracks. I loved those. They were all female artists. So it was like Elkie, Meg Mac. Who else had he done at that point? Just a lot of stuff. Timothy Nelson and the Infidels from Perth. He'd done their album, and I just met him a few years earlier, and I was like, I love that album. Oh my god, he produced that one too. Oh, he's done Meg Mac. Oh, he's done Elkie. She's doing really well. Oh wow. And so I was kind of like, that's awesome. So that was kind of the catalyst of like, I'd already knew that I wanted to be balladeer, but I wanted the music to be that like next level, really fresh production. And it is really scary when you are changing, but you're right. If you don't just do it, it'll never happen. So I was really grateful that I had that opportunity then and there, but it all kind of just fell really short because they all got recorded really quickly. And then I had been planning to go over to Europe in 2020, and I had a few things that I thought were happening just all fell through, and I just thought, I actually had honestly thought that big things were going to be happening, because I'd had such an amazing year living in Melbourne and had this recording opportunity that went so well, and I thought, wow, this song is really like, I loved listening to the song, and yeah, I just had so much hope, and it all just fell short. So when I really wanted to launch Balladeer, I wanted to make sure I had all the visual stuff with it. So I had the music, but now I need the visual stuff. So I crowdfunded for a music video for Bloom, my first song. So it was a big process. Yes. Did it come out late? There's never a good time. So whenever you do it, that's the time. But I think the more you procrastinate, you miss opportunities, perhaps.
Yeah.
So I think it is best just to put your work out there. Just keep moving forward and just keep writing the entire time, which I did. So even though I wasn't releasing when I wanted to release, I was still constantly writing, even though I had a very big lull period, which I'm sure a lot of people did. But I concentrated on other things, and that's kind of how I got to the change. And I'm really happy with where I am now. And I don't think I'll be changing it again. So I'm happy with that. So
yeah. I don't think Bella should switch things up again either. I like her current style and sound and can't wait to hear more releases, which she promised would be coming in 2024. But she's got another significant accomplishment under her belt. In 2021, her song Care Too Much, which I've already praised, was recognized as a finalist in the esteemed APRA AMCO's Vanda and Young Global Songwriting Competition. And here, let me briefly explain what that is. It's a competition that acknowledges great songwriting whilst supporting and raising money for Noro. It was established in 2009 by Alberts, an independent music company, in collaboration with APRA AMCOS, which is the Australian Music Rights Management Organisation. The competition was fittingly named after iconic writers Harry Vanda and the late George Young, who have written a string of hits since the 60s, performed by both local and international artists. Worldwide, their songs have been replicated by the likes of Tom Jones or David Bowie. All proceeds raised by the Vanda and Young Global Songwriting Competition go to not-for-profit called Noro, whose mission is to transform lives through the provision of music therapy. When Bella submitted her song to the competition, she was in great company, so to speak. Genesis Owusu, a Canberra-based rapper making waves in the Aussie scene now, won the competition that year, and Jerome Farah and Maya were also in the top 3. So I wanted to know about the timeline of that accomplishment and what it meant for Bella.
Well, because I was waiting to release my tracks for so long, because I really believe that I always want to play, if I'm releasing something, I want to play a live show, and because we couldn't play live shows, I felt I had no motivation really, and I just decided to put Care Too Much into the Vanda and Young competition. And you enter things for years and you pay the entry fee, and it just goes, you feel like it goes nowhere. And I remember just being at work one day and I got this email saying, instead of unfortunately, which seemed to be the trending word of forever, it just said congratulations for once. And I was like, what? Whoa, what? And yeah, I was gobsmacked that it had got into the finalists of that competition. So I just feel like all that waiting and all that anxiety of, I felt like I wasn't in the music industry anymore. I felt like all the hard work had gone to nothing, and it was just a really nice affirmation that, hey, all the work you did is valid and it's always going to be, because recordings work forever. Like, I was listening to the radio the other day and there's still, whichever local station it was, they're just, playing the same old tunes from, the 80s over and over. And I'm like, are they ever going to play new music on the station? Probably not. Yeah. But, those songs never, like, good songs never die. So I was like, it's just a nice little nod, and it gave me the motivation to keep going and keep writing and trying to find new musicians to play with and reach out to people. And I just got my mojo back, because I feel that music is such a big part of my identity that I felt like just part of my soul had been ripped out and stood upon, and I was never going to feel like me again. And since everything just started to fall into place and I get to do what I want to do again, I just feel like I'm back. So, and that's been for a while now. So, all those cheesy quotes about, if you fail and don't get back up, it's about getting back up, not the failure. And I'm so bad at quoting quotes like that, but it's just like, just keep going, just keep swimming, and just do it because you love it. Because at the end of the day, if you don't love it, what's the point? And you're not really doing it for for any ticks of approval, but it's just nice to get that.
True.
Every once in a while.
Yeah, I feel you, because I've got this impression that I've mostly been hearing a no for like a lot of time now, from different things that I want to do, like projects and I pitch to, and it's like no, like a streak of no's. So I'm waiting for that yes, because they say it happens. And I also feel you in the sense that obviously whatever you do, and if you love doing something, it shows, and you basically do it because you love it. But some kind of validation, I think, also gives you, like you said, motivation to go on. And if you that it resonates with people, you know, so I totally understand. But I thought it was like you wanted to enter the competition, so you wrote this song for it. But it looks like it was the other way around. You had the song and you was like, I'm just gonna submit it to this comp, right?
Yeah, I've never pitched anything from a set idea or whatever, but that's a good challenge too, perhaps. But no, yeah, it was just sitting there and I put it in. So I need to put in another one for something else, I think.
But then there is like just kind of take me through the timeline as well, because as far as I can see that that competition was in 2021, whilst you released the song like last year. So there's like a 2-year break. So what was happening at the time?
Oh, look. So the songs were recorded in 2019, which was quite a while ago. And then 2020 was the nothing year, and then 2021 and 2 was just preparing for a launch. I didn't really have a goal at that point. I didn't really have a release date. I kept pushing it back. I spent like a year trying to figure out a logo, like wasting time, like don't get me started on that. Just so many things, other things, life things. And then making the music video for Bloom 2022, releasing in October. And I would have loved for Care Too Much to have come out earlier last year, but it was actually the music video that held us up the most because David and I we just wanted it to be perfect, didn't we? So in the end we're like, that shot's not gonna ever be perfect, dude, so let's just roll with it now. So we need firm hard deadlines. And
but what a beautiful song, and I love the video as well because you shot it in the places that I've been, and you know, kind of brings back good memories as well. And that part,
that's nice.
Well, yeah, it's beautiful. So I love your vocals. And, you know, just the fact that you have been a finalist in that songwriting competition tells me much about who you are as well as a musician. So a question to you. Are you a better songwriter or vocalist? Or are you both? Or like, do you prefer one over the other?
Oh, wow. I've always thought that my vocals are perhaps a little bit different, a little bit not the carbon copy what's cool or whatever. I've kind of just always, you know, as everyone does, has their own sort of sound, but I would like to think that both your vocals and songwriting, they are continually getting better. But I want to say songwriter because I don't consider my vocals. I would rather the song be a strong song than the vocals be fully amazing. So I would rather not use auto-tune and have like the crackles in your voice or maybe slightly off pitch. I would rather have that. But if it's a good song, none of that ever matters. So I think being a songwriter, am I a better songwriter than I am singer? I don't know. I would like to think I'm a better songwriter. I don't know.
I mean, there's no right or wrong answer, you know, it's just how you, the way you feel, you know, so I just wanted to kind of see how you see it. Now, just a heads up, there's going to be a slight mood change in the last part of our chat today, and for a good reason. When we were speaking about songwriting, Bella's vocals, and touring, all of a sudden she broke into a very earnest confession about the music industry these days, or better said, how she sees it. It's poignant actually to hear about it from someone who's at a fairly early stage in their music business career. Because let's face it, dreams and aspirations are one thing, but reality bites when it comes to other, more mundane but equally important aspects of trying to be a professional muso, no matter what country that is. I reckon you should hear it from Bella herself, because we still don't talk about the truth enough publicly. And it's also just a genuine perspective that might help other up-and-coming musos navigate their way in the Aussie and global music scenes. So you've been officially warned that an emotional rant is up next. But trust me, it's worth getting to know Bella's point of view. So here it comes.
Because when you work full time and then you work during the day and then you go to a gig at night and then you've gotten up at like 7 and then you've worked all day and then you've had 20 minutes to get ready and then you're in the car and then you're at the venue and then you've kind of got to support the other band and then you haven't eaten dinner and your dinner comes out at the same time you've got to go on the stage and then you get up on the stage and you're like, and now I'm here and these people paid money to be here, so now I've got to be in my zone. There's my set list. Is all my stuff working? Have I warmed up? Okay, cool, I'm on the stage. 120% into your set and you're just singing your heart out. You're playing as best you can in your with your tired brain, and you get off that stage and you're sweating, and people come talk to you straight away, and you've got to get all your shit off the stage because you don't have roadies, you know. And it's like, I am spent. Like, I love it, but how is this sustainable to have
Yeah.
two careers? Like, where you earn, like, even in today, 2023, indie artists in Australia are earning next to nothing for a show. Like, after you pay for the sound engineer, who always needs to be paid because they're working, that's their job. The venues need people in their door. And then you're kind of like last on the list. Like, you're giving the entertainment, but you're really actually probably the least important person in the sound engineer and the venue. That's how it feels from my perspective. It's not sustainable as a career, I don't think. And I think mental health wise, something needs to change with like pay rate for musicians. And like, is there any difference between someone who's doing it as a hobby and someone who's more serious? I don't know, but I just know that it just feels really unfair in today's cost of living crisis in Australia, and the amount of effort that artists are putting into a set it's just heartbreaking at some points when you you know, and it's heartbreaking for the other touring musicians who may have a group of 5 session musicians on stage with an artist. And then, you know, I personally don't like playing a gig if I can't pay the band. Like, why should I subject these people who are already kind of donating their time by rehearsing, and then what, I can't pay them like fairly for a gig? Like, what's the point? It's not what's the point, it's just really disappointing. And I know it's been like that for a while, but I felt more optimistic before 2020, and I felt like I don't know how many gigs I did in 2019, but I was being paid like properly and on time, and I felt like what I was asking for was I was receiving it. Even, you know, cover gigs are always good money, but to get paid to be paid fairly for an originals gig, something just, yeah, it's just in Australia, because of even like petrol costs, getting somewhere, staying at a venue. I stayed down in down near the 12 Apostles a couple of weeks ago, and, you know, just paid for the local hotel, and, you know, you're playing at a small venue, and, you know, of course you could ask for more money, but I never feel comfortable doing that. And then you got to pay for accommodation, you got to pay for food, and you got to pay for petrol. So it's like, I have to work, I have to have a day job. Like, what am I, crazy? Like, it's tough. It's tough. And I know people who are in the industry, they already know all of that. And people who aren't, I'm not sure if they really realize the mental, it is actually mentally taxing on us. And something has to change, but not sure what it is or how. I don't know if anyone does.
I'm with you 100%, because you know, I speak to a lot of musicians who are just starting out, and I can see that they have exactly the same point of view as you do. And I'm totally with you on the, you know, like many things that are happening in the music business don't take into account the musicians who are the actual reason why this business even exists. It's brutal out there. I know what it's like. And with the pay, don't even start me on that, because I think it's super unfair. But I don't know if it's going to make you feel better, because it's not a positive thing either, but it's not only Australia. I think it's everywhere. I remember even I went to there was a movie about the Melbourne music scene when I was living there, and I went to the kind of like the screening with the directors and stuff. And then there was like a Q&A with them afterwards, and with some musos who took part in that documentary. And someone said, you know, that even in Melbourne, which seems to be the capital of live music and everything's happening there, it's virtually impossible to maintain yourself as a muso unless you get to a certain level, which normally people don't get to at all or for a long time. So I know what you mean, and it's very frustrating. And like you said, something needs to change, but I don't know what that is either. I guess the whole kind of system would need to be built from scratch, but you know, there's too many people at the moment who are making money on it to want to give it up and build something else. So this is where we are. Yeah.
One thing I always come back to is, how come you can get Spotify for free with ads? Why can't you get Netflix free with ads? It's always free music.
Yeah.
It's always free music.
Yeah, it's always music. Yes, true story. Right, so there you go. Bella didn't sugarcoat anything, because sadly, that's the reality for a lot of musos as well. But hey, this is not the end of our chat, and we're definitely not going to leave this conversation on a negative note. The next part of our chat, the City Encore, is coming in a couple of days, and it is definitely much more optimistic. You'll find out more about Bella's musical background and her current adventures in the biz. I'll just mention that she might not have toured nationally in Australia yet, but she's already been gigging in South Korea for a change. Thanks heaps to Bella for opening up and sharing so many personal experiences and actually not censoring her thoughts. As someone who's constantly trying to hustle to score opportunities in the music business and beyond, myself, I totally second her point of view. So what you listeners could do now to help out an up-and-coming muso is check out Bella on socials and streaming platforms. I'll leave you a link to her platforms in the show notes. Plus, if I were you, I'd press that follow or subscribe to this podcast button now, so you won't miss future episodes. That way you can also support me, another working girl in the music biz. I hope you found this convo interesting. Bella and I will see you in the City Encore next. Take care for now.